Hello YouTube, Nathan. Today I'd like to tell you about how personally I would make modeling clay. And here's the hitch. Modeling clay made from dirt that you can find outside. Now we have a lot of clay in our backyard, so I got plenty back there. First of all, you need to dig up a lot of dirt. Well, I only dug up maybe half a bucket full. I was wondering if there was a way to make this non-drying clay. It's like always wet or something. I've forgotten. There's a certain kind of clay that always stays dry. It doesn't crack or anything like that. It doesn't dry out. Is it possible I could be able to put some oils of some sort into my clay mixture to make it a non-dry modeling clay? Well, let's get to the video. The way this works is we have three buckets. We have the dirt bucket, we have the sorting bucket, which we toss rocks and sticks and other types of matter that you don't want in your clay. And then we have the mixing bucket, which I have modified so I could be able to stick a stirrer in there, mixer, and also pour it out this little hole. And as you can see, I've already started. Now, when doing this, make sure you got some rubber gloves because this is a mess to sort through. All that sticky mud gets onto your hands and you can't get it off unless you wash it. Or you have rubber gloves to wash instead. A lot easier. The next step is to get maybe 2 to 3 gallons. I don't know if it's 2 or 3, but I'm going to find out in just a second when I pour it. 2 to 3 gallons of hot water. Okay, it's 2 gallons. Definitely 2 gallons. Okay. Okay, get my drill and mixer. Okay, let's start mixing. Alright, the cool thing about this mixer is it collects up all the grass and the weeds and the other stuff, the big stuff, whatever. Next, we strain the slurry. Just tip it over. Chocolate milk. The way this part works is I put the mixed water into here, and then I put water through the bottom, forcing the clay water up and out through this tube. Now the sand and all that kind of stuff is going to stay down here, while the pure clay goes up here. This was a foam making container which contained air and foam mixture, but it kept leaking at the top. Well, this method would be a lot easier if I used barrels, but that would be for a bulk. Now, we put this tube in there, and this is the water line, which I connect to that and turn everything on. Until the tube turns white. That means all of the clay has been removed. You just keep on going until it turns white. Or white-ish, as best you can. Anyway. Down to the next step. If you're going to do a small batch, you know, use some 2-liter pop bottles and use a siphon hose to fill them all up. Now, putting them into these bottles, just to let them settle. And you gotta time that right. Last time I didn't time it right, and it went all over the place. This would be the mud with less water in it. Well, I'm using a kerosene siphon pump to pump the slurry of mud. Sometimes you gotta pump it by hand. Well, that's pretty much it. Siphon tube. Now, what we do next is let the slurry settle a bit so we can remove the water. Now, this would be more, this would be as fun as watching paint dry, so I'll just click to the next scene. This is how my little idea is supposed to work. This would represent the hose water pumping into the slurry. Now, the water pushes up the clay, and the heavy stuff drops down there, and the pure clay ends up in here. So it goes from here, here, and then here. Now, this would represent maybe 2 barrels. This would represent the 2 barrels. So you'd have one hose going into the next one to skim off. You'd also use maybe a skimmer to get all this little stuff. Maybe I can get a close-up shot of it. This little stuff right here to get that leftover. Okay, Time to switch on the pump. The best way is just to let the water settle, have the clay at the bottom, drain off the excess water, and then take the slosh that's down there and filter that through a cloth-like substance like a t-shirt or a towel. Preferably a t-shirt, better to scrape off. This would be a bucket with the t-shirt in it. The idea here, stringed on there, tied down. And when you've gotten as most liquids as you can get out of the most water out of your sludge, you pour the rest. Now this will take a few days to drain. All you do is put it in a nice warm spot, cover it over, and wait until it all dries out, somewhat, to a sort of goopy slime consistency. Okay, it's been a day. Oop. But there still is a little bit of water in there. If you want to get rid of that, let it set for another day and drain. But it's that goop. It's that consistency. You want it. You want just a little water left over, so you can be able to get the whole mass out. Use a trowel and a container to put it in. The next step is to make yourself a plaster sheet. Now, a few tips on making plaster sheet. I used a cookie sheet. Now, when you make this plaster sheet, the first thing you want to do is put plastic wrap all around it, because the first layer. One second. Now it's giving me trouble. There. The first time I put the layer down, now fooling with me, it cracked severely when I tried to take it out of the sheet. So when I put the second layer on, it went all right. I usually keep the sheet in the cookie tin just to make sure it doesn't crack again. Now, you take your mud and lather it on the sheet.
You're trying to mix me up. Mrs. Aitken, you must tell me the truth. I won't talk without medicine.
Now, depending on how moist this clay is, depending on how moist the clay is, will determine on how fast this plaster plate will absorb the water. Right now, it kind of looks like pudding. Well, another little tip: when this clay dries, you want to put your plaster plate on a heat source, maybe an oil heater, or if you have a stove or toaster oven, and this can fit into it, you can put it in there, heat it up, and it will take out the moisture. Now, if it's fresh and hot, and you put the clay on there, it will decrease the time of drying, because this plaster will absorb it like a sponge. So, let's just wait a few hours. I'll click over to the next scene, and you'll see a dry piece of clay. Okay, now it's dry. All you have to do is fold it. Get underneath it and hold it up. Take your bag or whatever container you have. Put it in there. Now we take this out and dry it for the next batch. A tricky bit to putting plaster on there.
As everywhere the signs to the destination you dream of are revealing themselves to you.
Yeah, we just let that sit
They are there.
and dry that out. As I said, you can, if you have a smaller block, or you could use a toaster oven or bigger oven, or fire or some sort of heating device
Scattered across the
to heat
canvas of
this
our
panel up,
is the map to your
and you'll be
destiny.
ready to go
You just need
later
to
on
make
for the next batch.
California.
Well, anyway, this is my personal version and some thoughts and ideas on how to refine it. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for further notifications of upcoming videos. If you have any ideas for a project, or you'd like to help a project, go to my Patreon page and comment your idea, and also donate to help other projects along.